Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into something that's, well, it's a huge part of your daily life, isn't it? Social media. For so many people, especially, younger generations, it feels like it's just always been around. Sort of this constant presence. But you remember when it first started? The original idea, it was honestly pretty simple. Just connecting people, meaningfully, finding new ways to talk to each other. It felt more personal then, like getting an invite from a friend you actually trusted. And privacy? Well, that felt like a big deal. User trust was key. It definitely wasn't, designed to make you stare at a screen for hours on end. The focus seemed more on like health and safety, minimal algorithms pushing things on you. But somewhere along the line, that script totally flipped, didn't it? So our deep dive today, it's really about understanding that huge, maybe even insidious shift. We're digging into how social media's main goal seemed to pivot quite sharply away from that genuine human connection and towards, well, basically advertiser and shareholder interests, which has created what a lot of people now just flat out call a toxic environment.
What were those early signs? How did this whole transformation actually, take hold? And maybe most important for you listening, is social media even safe anymore? Thinking about privacy, security, bad actors, and what's the real impact it's having on the mental health of younger people today?
Yeah, and the sheer amount of material we've gone through for this deep dive really highlights how urgent these questions are. This isn't just like random opinions. It's pulled from rigorous observations, lots of studies, some really unsettling real-life cases. We're talking over 25 different sources here. We even have insights from whistleblowers, people who are actually inside these companies. And I have to be honest, the findings are pretty stark. Really quite concerning. We're seeing this rise in content made almost entirely by younger people themselves. These really curated face profiles are everywhere, where young users feel this pressure, often immense pressure, to show only this idealized, heavily filtered version of themselves. And alongside that, you've got hate-filled content getting promoted, filters that create completely false ideas of reality. It's a lot. For
Yeah.
parents listening, this dive offers, I think, really critical insight, stuff to help you navigate this and support your kids. And for young people tuning in, it's a chance to maybe get a clearer picture of these platforms, hopefully empowering you to make more informed choices about how you engage online.
Right. So it sounds like that key shift, that move away from pure connection towards focusing almost entirely on advertisers and shareholders, it really fundamentally kind of corrupted that original vision. Our sources really get into how that happened specifically. Developers consciously putting in these psychological measures just to keep users hooked. Can you maybe elaborate a bit on what some of those measures actually were and how they turned what seemed like a harmless tool into something, well, toxic?
Absolutely. Yeah, the data is pretty clear. Once the main goal became engagement purely for revenue, these platforms started building in what our sources call compulsive design features. And these weren't, accidents or oversights. They were very deliberate techniques designed to tap into the brain's reward system. Think dopamine hits. That little rush of pleasure that, for a lot of people, unfortunately leads to compulsive use. And this starts pushing out other activities, real life relationships. It can really hinder the development of crucial social skills. The impact isn't the same for everyone either. While the original adult users seemed less affected, maybe because they didn't grow up with it, we've seen a really clear rise in negative consequences for younger generations who've basically been immersed in this environment their whole lives.
Okay, so with this big shift towards just maximizing engagement time, what were the sort of immediate, tangible effects on young people's mental health? The sources we looked at paint a pretty grim picture, mentioning things like anxiety, depression, cyberbullying. Could you flesh those out a bit?
Indeed. Yeah, excessive social media use is directly linked in the studies to increased symptoms of anxiety and depression, especially in teenagers. I mean, just think about it. The constant bombardment of curated images, images that are often heavily manipulated, and that relentless pressure to put forward a perfect online self, it almost inevitably leads to feelings of inadequacy, low self-esteem, constant social comparison. Am I good enough? And then you layer on cyberbullying, which sadly is just rampant. We saw examples in the source material. Messages so cruel, so nonstop that they completely destroy young people's sense of safety and self-worth, leading to just profound sadness, feeling powerless, and even tragically suicidal thoughts in some cases. It's a really stark reminder, isn't it, how damaging a digital interaction can be in the real world.
And it's not just the emotional distress, right? Our sources also pointed to significant sleep problems.
Exactly. Yeah, think of it like this. Your brain needs melatonin to signal that it's time to wind down and sleep. But all that blue light pouring out of screens, especially late at night, it actively interferes with that signal. It suppresses melatonin production. So it's not just about losing, say, an hour of sleep here or there. It's about disrupting your entire sleep cycle, your sleep architecture. And that has knock-on effects the next day on your mood, your ability to concentrate, your emotional resilience, everything. And what's particularly worrying is how these problems get amplified by age vulnerability. Adolescents aged around 11 to 13, particularly girls, and then 14 to 15, particularly boys, seem especially susceptible. The studies clearly show that those spending over 3 hours a day on social media face basically double the risk of poor mental health outcomes. Double.
Which kind of brings us to maybe the biggest and often the most invisible force shaping what we see online. The algorithms. It's not just the content itself, but how it gets served up to you, especially for teenagers.
Right. And here's a really key takeaway from the research we reviewed. Passive social media use. Just mindlessly scrolling through feeds someone else curated for you seems to be more harmful to adolescent mental health than actively engaging, like messaging friends. These algorithms, they're literally designed to keep you scrolling. They can end up reinforcing negative feelings, unrealistic standards, and that directly feeds into depression and anxiety. They can create these what people often call echo chambers or filter bubbles, which basically trap teenagers in this loop where they mostly just see stuff that confirms what they already think or feel, cutting them off from different perspectives and, yeah, potentially making mental health issues worse.
And it's not just the algorithms either, is it? Specific design choices on the platforms themselves seem to make things worse. Hashtags, for instance. They can be great for finding communities, sure, but they can also amplify really toxic stuff tragically fast. And comments. Wow, our sources describe comments as being especially damaging. Cyberbullying happening in comment sections is consistently linked to increased suicidal thoughts.
Indeed. Yeah, a lack of truly age-appropriate design features is a huge issue. It exposes younger users to things they're just not equipped to handle: violence, harassment, even grooming attempts. We also see gender playing a role. Females often report more mental health issues related to social media, and the platform design can worsen this. Like, Snapchat, with its disappearing messages, can really fuel that FOMO, the fear of missing out, constant anxiety about what you might not be seeing. Whereas Facebook, maybe with its emphasis on highly polished profiles, might contribute more to those unrealistic comparisons and body image problems.
And then there are the notifications, those constant pings, the vibrations buzzing in your pocket. Our sources show they definitely add to stress, anxiety, feelings of just being overwhelmed, especially for younger users.
And here's another really critical point. Those notifications, they are not random. They're not accidental. They were meticulously designed, engineered even, to fuel social comparison by constantly throwing idealized content in your face, which, predictably, lowers self-esteem. They absolutely disrupt sleep, which, as we said, makes mental health issues worse. And yes, they create that intense sense of FOMO, that feeling you have to check, contributing to addiction, and sometimes this desire to just escape from real life. It's a very sophisticated system, really, engineered to keep you online, to maximize your engagement time and, well, ultimately, revenue. For these platforms, the main goal isn't necessarily your safety or your well-being. It's about optimizing the minutes of hours you spend using their service. So to sort of synthesize the key takeaways from this whole deep dive, it's unmistakably clear, really, that social media can have a significant negative impact on the mental health and well-being of young people. And this isn't some unfortunate side effect. It's baked in. The platform's designs, the algorithms, the features, the notification systems, they are intentionally crafted. They're made to maximize engagement and, through that, generate revenue. And often that comes at the direct expense of mental health. So this responsibility, it's collective. It falls on all of us.
Yeah.
Parents, educators, policymakers, and yeah, the social media companies themselves. Everyone has a really crucial role to play in trying to mitigate these risks, whether it's through monitoring, education, regulation, or ideally, fundamental changes in design that actually prioritize well-being over simple engagement numbers. And this includes those specific recommendations we talked about, like actively encouraging offline activities, really promoting digital literacy skills, implementing proper age-appropriate design, and giving users transparent, customizable control over notifications.
Building on that idea, making more informed choices. Here's maybe a final thought for you to sort of mull over after this. What really is the true cost of being constantly connected, of maintaining these carefully curated digital selves that we show the world? And maybe even more importantly, what does genuine healthy connection actually look like now in a world that's so heavily shaped by these incredibly powerful and sometimes manipulative platforms? Maybe consider how you personally could contribute, even in small ways, to a shift towards more mindful digital interactions, ones focused more on well-being.